This is Sybert signing into Red Alert 3 on the map Snow Plow, and spawning as the Green Empire in the north side, we do indeed have Technique. He is going to be smurfing as Barcode, and as the blue allies in the bottom side, we do indeed have Maniek, who is opening up with a single barracks followed by that power plant. Why is that so important? Because single barracks versus dual barracks, particularly on Snow Plow, is pretty darn important. As you can see, Technique, on the other hand, he is looking not to go for both of the oil derricks necessarily. As you can see, there's no dojo moving out to the left side of the map. He's just going for the single one, but he is going to be going for a lot of production right up the front and right through the middle of the map. And of course, that's very important because Maniek is only going for just that single barrack. So very easily, he could be overwhelmed. We'll have to see exactly what he does to deal with it. He might be going for a naval yard, and he might be going for some riptides. He is going to be going for that second refinery, and other than that, these build orders are pretty darn standard for both of these players. Interestingly enough, Technique is going to be sending a lot of units over to the right side of the map, and we have basically no dogs coming out from Maniek. Normally you see a dog to each oil derrick just to try to cut down any engineers, and it's one of those things where it's like, are you going to kill the engineer? Probably not. But if you're lucky and the Empire player isn't paying attention, you will kill the engineer. You will deny that oil derrick from being capped. So that's one thing that you have to keep into consideration. Although, look at that Technique. He is going to be taking out that bridge quite early on. Normally, you don't see bridges sniped that early on, and he already took out this bridge. I actually missed that one. But we do have the the pretty fast airfield. It's not super fast or anything, but it is going to be pretty standard for, this is normally where players position. It allows them to take that third refinery and get repairs if they so choose, and it also kind of helps to wall off that refinery to protect against Tengus. But the Apollo is out as well as that Vindicator, and actually, Maniek is going to be camping the War Factory of Technique. This is so annoying to have happen. But as you can see, look at that. No walls out from Technique, which means that we could be seeing a Riptide Javelin composition. Maybe, probably not, but maybe. As of course, if you take no walls, if you throw down no walls, it kind of does leave you open to that. But we've got two Vindicators out, which means this ore refinery will not be going down because Maniek actually uses his bombs on that bridge. As you can see, it's very close to getting killed, and I mean, he could have potentially finished it off with that Javelin Trooper before any Imperial Warriors got away. And oh, that one Imperial Warrior, that poor guy, he is dead. So Maniek really wants to make sure that this center little bridge, this land bridge, is the main path. Of course, that allows him to throw down multi-gunner turrets right on the center here and kind of camp this center bridge with his airfield. We have a fast tier 2 coming out from Technique. He does not transform in time, but I mean, even if he did transform in time, the Apollo is right there. So he would have been taken out at any rate. But the third refinery is up and running, and that is exactly what Technique wants. He was, because Maniek ended up going for that bridge, he was able to go ahead and establish that third economy without any real trouble. Maniek is currently going to be a little bit behind in the eco just because he doesn't have that third refinery, and he also doesn't have an oil derrick, which is something that Maniek never did do. He instead is going to be going for a much stronger air force, and actually Maniek may be throwing away one Apollo. Some nice focus firing there from Technique, almost takes out that Apollo, but not quite good enough. However, we do have on the left side Imperial Warriors going to be marshaling up. So Technique, he doesn't necessarily want to move out like super early and try to be super aggressive because of how locked down this middle can be. Of course, with the garrisons here, and with the one garrison there is a second one down there, but it's not too important. But with the garrisons and multi-gunner turrets, and of course the crazy build radius on allied MCVs, you can lock down that center aisle pretty easily. Not super easy, but relatively easily compared to a lot of other maps which have more of a three different attack paths. Once you take out those bridge, what was kind of 3 attack paths just kind of turns into 1 attack path for ground units. And of course, amphibious units are able to get around that, but not too many of those. Well, actually, no. For Empire, there's lots of them if you just go Mecha Bay, because of course Tengus and VXs can transform, so we'll have to see if counterattacks are going to be the name of the game for Technique. Lots of Peacekeepers just being given away for the cheaper Imperial Warriors, which is going to be a slightly inefficient trade for Maniek, but I mean, as long as he maintains a relatively strong ground army, he doesn't have too much to worry about. The third refinery going to be established for Maniek a fair bit after the third refinery of Technique, and Maniek is like, okay, looks like there are going to be some tsunami tanks here and waiting. Will they actually get the Riptide? No, they will not, but just barely. They do indeed miss it. Technique has locked down that fourth and final bridge, meaning that this is going to be getting potentially a little bit even more campy, as neither one of these players has really moved out from their base in a big way. Technique kind of did with some Imperial Warriors, but that wasn't really too big of a deal in the big scheme of things. However, he is at a nice, massive unit. He needs to make sure that he controls well enough that he doesn't throw any of them away wastefully. And we'll have to see, because there's currently, oh, actually, this is probably a cryocopter building right now. There was no cryocopters, but there may be cryocopters showing up right as this army arrives. It's a few seconds left. They're going for the refinery, and we do have in a very poor position these Striker VXs, of course, with the tsunami tanks this far out into the water. It's hard for those strikers to actually protect them, and Technique is going to be pulling back some of his tsunami tanks one at a time. However, he is going to have to lose one of them, but he is trading it for a refinery, so that is going to be a pretty good trade. Actually, I think he lost a second one to the Vindicators a little bit earlier, so that's not necessarily a super effective trade, but when you count in lost mining time, it should roughly even out into slightly being Technique's favor. But Maniek does now have that oil derrick on the left side, again, severely delayed in comparison to Technique's oil derrick. And actually, if he can smash down this Riptide, which either has a Javelin Trooper or an Engineer, it actually is going to be a Javelin Trooper to go ahead and take down that, and there's no escape. No escape, Riptide, because Maniek already killed the bridge. So, but yeah, that Javelin Trooper trying to take down that oil derrick did not work out. Now Maniek is going to have to go ahead and start rebuilding that third refinery if he at all can. And yet again, another Riptide is going to be heading out for Maniek. He wants to try to hit everywhere that he can. Technique is finally like, oh, Tengus are pretty good. Yeah, I went straight for tier 2, but you do need to remember Tengus are pretty good. At the same time, another Riptide is moving out. Well, actually, that same Riptide that we saw a little bit earlier, and it is going to be potentially an Engineer, although that would be a very difficult spot to hold. It is going to be an Engineer this time, so not actually a Javelin Trooper, as of course Engineers can capture faster than a single Javelin Trooper will be able to take down that oil derrick. And on the right side, on the left side of the map, we do have Cryocopters and Vindicators coming out here. And as you can see, Maniek, he has enough Cryocopters to freeze down that refinery. He needs to get out of there. The Apollos are a little bit more expendable, but he won't even be losing those. Some nice moves there by Maniek. At the same time, in the middle of the map, we do have the Strikers not quite in a nice enough position. They potentially could have caught off one or two of those aircraft. And Technique comes in here. Actually, if he grabs a Cryocopter or two, that'll be even better. Unfortunately, he expended maybe a few too many Tengus earlier in this match, and a little bit further to the north, we do have that, we do have actually a Riptide going to be spotting that fourth refinery, which is now currently the third refinery for Technique, and Technique is scrambling a little bit to deal with these attacks. He doesn't quite have the forces that he needs because he went for that tier 2, and when you go no Tengus, especially on a map like Snow Plow, where you need forces out over the water, you need forces out in your main base, and you need forces out on the left side as well from Technique's perspective. You need to split your forces basically across the map. And I mean, Empire Static D isn't very good, so Tengus help to fill that role with their extreme mobility. But Technique will indeed save that refinery, may have even saved the Harvester, I'm not exactly sure. But of course, Strikers and Tengus kind of help to fill that role. Tsunamis are good in the DPS end of things, but they're bad in the mobility end of things. And I shouldn't say bad, they're just not quite as good as Tengus and Strikers are, just because they can fly, so you don't have to worry about terrain or anything like that. But of course, once you start mixing in Apollos from the allied player, things start to get shaken up a little bit. We might actually need to see a bit more infantry out of Technique so that he can have more of a standing army and then an aggressive army that also allows him to hit multiple angles. So if we see something like where it's a bunch of Imperial Warriors straight up the front here. Oh, I'm also going to be attacking on the side. That can be extremely effective. We do have Apollos going to be moving in here. The Tengus will be getting some nice shots off there, and now that that airfield is down, there's nowhere for them to retreat to for that F button to take them away safely, and at the same time, there's no repair drones. This attack coming out from Technique is exactly what he needs. He's actually hitting where Maniek is his weakest, and he can actually grab this multi-gunner turret if he wants. He actually will not. I think that's a slight mistake, leaving that there, but at the same time, he's got it so weak that Maniek is going to have to expend quite a bit of cash trying to get that guy back up to full health. Or at the other option is just selling it off, for which he will get very little return. And Yari mini-subs, I feel, would be a better choice just to go ahead and start poking away at some of these external expansions for Maniek. And I'm not exactly sure if going for that water expansion is actually a better idea than going for this expansion. Because, I mean, it's a little bit further away, which means it's a little bit longer and harder for those Tengus to get there. But at the same time, this is a lot easier to defend, but we'll have to see because, I mean, we could be seeing Tengus dropping in the in over here at multiple locations, you know, splitting Tengus, a couple over here, and then a couple in the main base. Even going for that power plant just being annoying, because if you can knock the base into low power mode, well, then suddenly those base defenses and production don't do quite as well as they were before. And right now, we're finally going to be seeing potentially some multi-prong attacks coming in from Technique. I think he was expecting, yeah, he was actually expecting a harvester and a refinery to be there. He thought that Maniek was going to be sitting on more of a 5 refinery economy instead of just 4 refinery, but we do have a single Tengu moving out, and this is a nice move from Technique because he knows, okay, I'm not distracting him over here anymore, which means that if I commit too many Tengus here and they get taken out, that is an extremely ineffective harassment, even if I do kill that harvester, because of course trading any more than basically 1 Tengu for 1 harvester is gonna end up being pretty ineffective, especially if your allied player is paying attention, because they'll have that harvester ready to go just as the second one, or as the first one dies. They'll be able to throw down a harvester and get their mining right back up, and so they're not actually losing any mining time, and you're trading more Tengus than the harvester's cost. So it's just cost ineffective is what I'm trying to say. We're starting to see more infantry and maybe even some tank busters mixed in. Not a huge number because of the heavy infantry composition of Maniek's ground army, but Technique needs to do something more than just this single prong attack at this one location. He needs to start hitting multiple fronts and or just straight up pushing in through the middle at the same time. We do have an assault destroyer going to be heading around the top side of the map, and Maniek is moving out with his powerful air army. Of course, you have to watch out for those cryocopters. At the same time, Technique is going to be moving in for the counterattack, so we've actually got multi-pronged drops, or harass is going to be coming in here as the cryoblast does fire off. Tengus are here in mass, but there's no point defense drones, which means they're not going to be trading very effectively against these Apollos. They will do well enough to eliminate all of the Apollos. The refinery does go down, and this harvester has not been taken out. Unfortunately, Maniek not multitasking as well as is perfect, so unfortunately he is going to be harassing over here and on the left side, but he kind of missed out on his opportunity to hit this harvester, and he might actually get it anyway. So no, he is actually going to be able to take down that harvester, but he could have potentially taken out both of those harvesters as Technique is being forced to deal with the base on the right side of the map. And this is a great use of just individual units, and he's actually forcing the sell-off of that refinery. A nice move there by Maniek. Sells that off, sells off the command hub as well. A great harassment there for Maniek, since he cut off that mining. He may have actually killed the harvester as well, yeah. So at the very least, Technique would have been spending 1,400 credits to rebuild that harvester, and now he's going to have to spend the 2,500 to go ahead and get that refinery back online if he does. But I mean, again, 2 refineries getting taken out for Maniek, that's exactly what he needs. But at the same time, Technique striking back and making sure that he's keeping Maniek on his toes. But more strikes against these production structures from Technique would be extremely cost-effective. Well, it would be extremely nice, but would it actually be cost-effective? We do have, not actually going to be a big deal, but this is something that you need to stay wary of, is units, the pathing getting split around geometry in the map. In this case, not a big deal at all, because these units are going to be joining up anyways, but potentially you could have seen if Maniek had some Guardian tanks, just theory crafting here, if Maniek had some Guardian tanks there, potentially those Tsunami tanks could have taken a really poor engagement. Just something to think about, geometry of the map and how it affects pathing. But we do have Tengus on the left side of the map primed for a counterattack, and Technique needs to hit now. But he may be waiting so that Maniek doesn't actually realize that Technique has a large contingency of Tengus on the left side of the map. He actually did leave 1 or 2 behind. He does have 2 left there. And we have a big engagement in the middle of the map. We do have Black Hole Armor being activated. This army is not actually going to be engaging here, and Cryocopters are not going to be super effective against this army anyways, just because of how many there are. But Cryoblast is going to be a lot more effective. The split of the infantry is not super optimal, but at the same time, we do have a couple of cryocopters. One will be going down. The rest of these infantry are going to be crushing on through. Technique, unfortunately, not going to be able to hold the line where he would like. This harvester did go down. Technique does transform and is going to be pulling back those Tengus just in time. He forgot about those two over there, but he's rallying them in now. Can he actually deal with this? There's like 7 Apollos out on the field, and actually, no, there goes the Mecha Bay, so this is all down to it for Technique. Maniek may be able to just crush through the rest of this game. The Tengus do show up, but can they actually deal with these Apollos? The point defense drones are on the Tsunami tanks. The ground army will be forfeit from Maniek, as Technique does crush through pretty much all of it, but the Apollos are not here to protect those cryocopters. A couple of the Apollos most likely did go down. All of the cryocopters except for one do go down. I know the rest of these Apollos are getting shredded as well. Technique smashing through this army. The Tsunami tanks are still here, but is it going to be enough? Both of the refineries have gone down, as has that tier 2 Mecha Bay. That is a huge investment for Technique, and suddenly Technique with that one move was able to even things up quite a bit, but can he actually come back in this game? He has taken a huge amount of damage, and he has not dealt a huge amount of damage. However, Maniek over here has not been able to get that harvester back up and running, and while he is going to be eventually getting that back online, this is a huge amount of lost mining time for basically no cost to Technique. So that was a very good engagement, and now Technique, who does have a pretty strong army, can he actually keep himself here and keep himself in a very strong position? He's giving units away. He doesn't want to be giving away that veterancy if he can avoid it. Taking out this oil derrick is a nice move. Unfortunately, he didn't do this 3 or 4 minutes ago, where it would have played a little bit of a bigger role, but taking it out now is certainly nice. Losing a heroic Tengu is not something you want to be doing, but Maniek does still control the middle of the map. He is still in a strong economic position, and he was able to do a huge amount of damage to Technique earlier in that game. Again, Tier 2 has not been purchased on that Mecha Bay. Technique is currently sitting on 2 refinery economy, and that is just not something you want to be. Not somewhere you want to be this far into the game. When you're hitting, you know, close to that 20-minute mark, you don't want to be on that 2 refinery economy. You want to be a little bit closer to where Maniek is, talking about 3, 4, 5 refinery economy, something in there. I mean, at least 3 refineries on 18 minutes. 4 refineries would be even better, and of course 5 refineries is great, but a lot of times you don't have the ease to get up to that point. Maniek, can he actually deal with this attack? He's lost quite a few cryocopters, and we should have some strikers, which will maybe be able to do some against the cryocopters, which cryocopters actually are nowhere near this base, so Technique is going to be getting some free kills, and finally we are starting to see those multi-prong attacks, but is it going to be enough? We do have 3 Tsunami tanks, 2 of which are fully heroic, and this Assault Destroyer does not attack fast enough to deal with those 3 Tsunami tanks. But the strikers have been able to clear up that one refinery. The power plant will be going down as well. They should be able to clean up that power plant as well. On the left side of the map, we do have Apollos going to be catching out a couple of Tengus here. More Apollos getting sent over to that side of the map when they really actually do need to be over here. Where are those extra strikers? They might have all already transformed up into the air, but will they be able to transform yet again? They're going to be in a very bad position. 3 do transform. A 4th does transform as well, and almost all of the Apollos do go down. Maniek overstepping his bounds a little bit. Well, at least those 3 Apollos did go down, and these strikers should be in a pretty good position. That last cryocopter gets smashed as Technique is able to take that down. So Maniek does indeed lose that cryocopter. Tier 2 hasn't been purchased. Still, no, it's just pure it's just pure Tengus coming out of Technique, and that may be enough at this point. He's got lots of heroic units on the map. We've got an elite and a fully heroic a fully heroic chopper VX rather, and then 2 fully heroic Tsunami tanks. So Maniek, he has not been able to defend his kind of exterior bases, his outer perimeter bases, as well as he would have liked. Taking down this power plant would be a nice move, but sniping this refinery a little bit nicer for Technique. And are we going to be seeing a big transform out of Technique? These Apollos will be met with extreme prejudice from these Tengus because there are so many Tengus here. Maniek has been under so much pressure, and he was doing great in the first half of this game, but Technique has been able to sort of claw his way back into the game, and it started with a great engagement back in his base. However, Tengus are going down in mass to Apollos, not an engagement that was favorable for Technique in any way, shape, or form. His Tsunami tanks, they're great at killing walls, but are they good at killing anything else? Infantry now going to be engaging, and if those Javelin Troopers may have been a little bit closer, they might have been able to do some more, but would it actually have been some nice control here by Maniek, and then he falters at the last second there as that tsunami tank does clean up pretty much everything, and at the same time, these two tsunami tanks have been doing constant DPS to that refinery. Maniek is not going to be getting an opportunity to get an additional harvester out. Some nice control there by Technique, going to be activating the nano deflectors, and we will actually be getting a crush or two. We'll be crushing 3 Peacekeepers, maybe actually losing this tsunami tank. We'll have to see. The refinery does go down, and Maniek is reduced to 1 refinery economy, which is not a fun place to be against currently 4 refinery Technique. So this game, which started out as a one-sided Maniek dominating match, has flip-flopped, and now Maniek was able to engage quite effectively, or relatively effectively in terms of units, with those Tengus. But was it actually enough to really even things up? Because I think Technique's uninhibited production has really been what got him back into this game. He was able to just mass up so many Tengus, and at the same time, he had the rest of his forces out on the field. And they were, I mean, they were heroic. They were very powerful units, and they were ready to go. Man, that last engagement just kind of reset both of these players. A lot of the infantry army from Maniek got obliterated, and of course pretty much the entire standing army from Technique also got completely destroyed. But Technique has to re-tech, and that is not something that Maniek has to do, but he does have to rebuild his refineries, and he's got 2 spots ready to go back in his main base. Cryogeddon does fire off, and here comes Emperor's Rage Tengus. They will be able to shred these Apollos with absolute ease. Even a Vindicator gets eliminated, trades it again for one of those, for one of the Mecha Bays. That is indeed what they are called. So, I mean, in terms of cost effectiveness, and the power plant goes down as well, guaranteeing that Technique will maintain this low power state. There's nothing you can really do about it at this point. He should just sell off that Defender Core. There's no way for him to get out of low power mode until he deals with these units. That's just going to be quite difficult with only Tengus. He will be able to deal with the Assault Destroyer as long as he controls well. Point defense drones do go down, and I mean, we might have to see these Tengus get split up into 2 groups and see that multitasking of Technique actually lead him to victory, because he doesn't want to lead losing stuff to crushes. That's why his control, he has to be so careful with his control, and at the same time, he also has to be careful enough to compensate for any lag which may be happening in a game. And this one Apollo, that is a gutsy Apollo, but it is not meant to be so, and it will escape eventually. It will definitely escape. However, Technique may be able to strike it down at another time. We do have an instant dojo. We may actually be seeing an engineer get produced and then a big strike. No, actually, the engineer is going into that observation post. So an interesting choice there for Technique. I'm kind of surprised he went for the observation post. I was kind of thinking he was going for a big man spam counterattack, although it probably would be spotted by Maniek pretty early on. If Technique could go ahead and clear out those civilian structures, then he could potentially hit a really big counterattack and do some serious damage to Maniek. But Maniek not losing his production structures. They still are maintaining their production, so he's still going to be going strong. He's currently sitting at 3 refinery economy, and Maniek, or Technique, is sitting at, I believe, 4 refinery economy, as he's got 1 there, 2 in the main base, and then 1 out on the right side of the map. Both of these players kind of calming down a little bit here. We may need to see a couple of more Riptides popping out for Maniek, but he doesn't even have the Naval Yard. So, I mean, he's got no War Factory, he's got no Naval Yard, so Riptides are certainly out of the question. Does he have the cash to actually produce Cryocopters once his MCV gets back in range of those airfields? I'm not entirely sure. I mean, he's currently going to be sitting on that 4 refinery economy, so he should have enough cash to produce at least a couple of Cryocopters, which could really help him engage quite effectively in any future ground battles. Mecha Bay has been re-established for Technique, and also the barracks was definitely sold off. But, we could be seeing point defense drones go down again, and will these Apollos... Yeah, as you can see, Technique, he's trying to get right under the Apollos before he engages, because it'll force the Apollos AI to kind of freak them out a little bit. They'll do this thing where they rotate to try to get... I believe they have a minimum fire range. Cryogeddon is going to be firing off once again, and this Vindicator may need to be sniped down. We'll have to see. Emperor's Rage does go off, and the Vindicator gets sniped down. Maniek has nothing to actually kill that Mecha Bay, and that is a Cryogeddon basically wasted. 3 airfields go down. Maniek is indeed an aircraft maniac. Is it actually a good idea to go for this many airfields? I have a hard time actually, like, agreeing with even dual airfield. But we'll have to see. I think Technique needs to go just straight man spam. Because, I mean, it doesn't really matter how many cryocopters you have if your opponent just builds infantry. Like, you're never going to be able to actually freeze and kill mass infantry with cryocopters. You'll be able to freeze quite a few of them, but it doesn't take too many to just... I mean, the multitasking is absolutely insane to try to deal with just mass infantry. Some really great splitting there and control by Maniek. He is locking down this Tengu attack pretty darn solidly. Imagine if there were tank busters mixed in with this composition. I'm talking 3, 4, 5 tank busters. Not necessarily a huge commitment from Technique, especially since he is going to be sitting on that 4 refinery economy. Oh my gosh, he might actually be getting even more of these airfields. Excellent bomb splitting coming out here from a Maniac in the heat of battle. Another airfield does go down. One does remain. And I mean, that's 2 grand in airfields alone, and then suddenly, if there's a bajillion Apollos that need somewhere to land, they are not going to have a spot. And we do have the final squadron going to be coming in. It looks like it's the Tier 2 version of it. I'm not entirely sure. And power plants having to get reestablished for Maniac. Here comes the final squadron. It should finish off. And they will get the Vindicator as well. They smashed that down, which was on the deck. There's 6 Apollos, 7 Apollos just waiting for a spot to land. I mean, once those... What are those... Where are those bullets coming from? Is that Tengu? Wow, that is a really weird glitch. That Tengu is freaking out for some reason. But once you start losing those airfields, you just have to be so careful about engaging with your Apollos, because you don't want to engage with your Apollos, waste all of their ammo, and then end up having to rebuild those airfields and try to, like, micro your Apollos so the correct ones which have no ammo land. Which, I mean, for those of you who don't know, if you don't have an airfield and your airplanes are out of your Vindicators, Cryocopters, Sentry Bombers, whatever have you, if they're out of ammo, then they just sort of slowly die. So, I mean, they won't die immediately, but they will slowly burn through their health if they don't have anywhere to land. Which, actually, no, I guess, I don't think it's limited, come to think of it. As long as you have one airfield, I think you can have, like, infinity aircraft already built. As long as you have one airfield, they won't burn down. But that is a Tengu, which is frozen down. So a little bit of a failed harassment out from Technique, but at the same time, can he gain an advantage in the middle of the map? Oh, not a good engagement for Maniac, and also not engaging with all of his Apollos against that many Tengus. This may be enough for just Technique to straight up muscle his way through. He decides instead, oh, yeah, this refinery you got? Well, I guess I'll go ahead and kill that instead, as we do have the refinery going to be getting taken out. Technique will be forced to pull back his Striker VXs. He needs to make sure that he does that so that he doesn't give too many of them away and he doesn't lose them unnecessarily. And these Tengus can transform and go for the Apollos immediately after this, and more importantly, go for those Cryocopters. They are going to be clearing the ground, which is a good choice, and clearing up those Javelin Troopers is a great move. Is he going to actually be transforming? I'm not entirely sure. That one Tengu is still bugged. Or I guess it's a different Tengu, because the other Tengu was a heroic Tengu. So it was red machine gun bullets. But we do have Tengus coming in. They claim 1, 2, 3 Apollo. Oh, Cryocopters all do get locked down, and the MCV does not freeze. I wonder if that actually affects it if you transform the MCV in the middle of the freeze, and that will be doing it. I think Maniac lost that one. It's hard to say for sure. I'm assuming Technique won that one. He was in a much stronger position. Maniac taking huge amounts of damage, but that will do it. So what started out as kind of a campy, kind of a one-sided match ended up turning into a great match between Technique playing as Barcode and Cryo or Cyro playing Maniac. That's his primary smurf that he does indeed use. And man, that was a pretty exciting game. I think we can all agree both players played well throughout the majority of that, and there were some really great points of micro throughout that match. Some points of miss micro as well, but some really great moments where it's just like, the control, so awesome. At any rate, that will pretty much do it for this game. As you can see, Technique ahead economically for the majority of that game. Maniac was expanding. I mean, if you think about the third refinery timing, that just kind of spelled out how the rest of the game went in terms of economics. Technique was typically ahead a fair bit versus Maniac, and we do have, in total, very, very little economic difference. In the end of things, the economics were not a big deal. We're talking about almost a 30-minute match where the difference is, 4,000 credits or just about. Not a big deal at all. In the end, it ended up coming down to some of those very key engagements where Technique was like, oh, you've got a bunch of stuff? Huh. Funny, because I have a whole bunch of Tengus with point defense drones and Emperor's Rage. By the way, they do crazy DPS and they hardly take any damage with those point defense drones, because you have to wear through the point defense drones before you actually start damaging those Tengus. So yeah, I mean, we saw kind of that style out of Maniek where he was like, what if I just build, like, no ground units for the second half of this match? How will that fare for me? And as it turns out, you can build, like, Infinity Tengus, but you can only build 4 Apollos, or 3 Apollos and a Vindicator, per airfield. So, kind of not the best idea to maintain your... Trying to maintain, like, Apollo straight up versus Tengu. Not a good idea. You really need either IFVs or Javelin Troopers on the ground, and we did see Maniek try to do that. He did a lot better in the earlier parts of the game, but in the second part, he was like, oh yeah, Javelin Troopers are good. I guess I'll get some of those. And then Technique was like, lol, I'll just shoot them. Anyways, that will be doing it for this game. Thank you very much for watching, and of course, a thank you to our players playing some wonderful matches. That will pretty much be wrapping up everything. Yep, thank you very much for watching, and this is Sybert signing out.